Sports Show. Check us out on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
He's going out, goal, he should be.
On CABC3, the future of broadcasting. With your host, Darnell Duff.
That ball hit hard. Stretch. Austin Jackson back looks up. Buchanan. Ready on the board. Yeah.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
That's right. It's time for the First Row Sports Show. Now, I usually use the tagline CABC, the future of broadcasting, but seeing as I graduated that school a couple weeks ago, we haven't had a sports show for a while. I was going through a little transition, moving to Toronto. Now, I'm actually at the 680 news desk doing this sports show. Lucky enough to have Theo Tutkaluk on the line. How are you doing today, Theo?
Good morning, Darnell. It's great to hear your voice. Did miss you for the last couple weeks. Congratulations. Things are sounding really good in Toronto. Good to hear your voice.
Thanks a lot. It's great to hear. I mean, it's a pleasure of mine that you this worked out, really. I mean, I know we've been talking about doing this for a while, but the fact that we're going to get this thing going today, it's obviously, it excites me. Hopefully a lot of people like. Let's talk about the Toronto Blue Jays. 9-1 winners over the Atlanta Braves last night. They lost 3-2 the night before. David Price was really good. This was just a complete team baseball game. Pitching, defensive, offensive. This is exactly what the Toronto Blue Jays need if they do want to win the World Series.
Well, they gave up the first game, allowing the Atlanta Braves to snap out of a 12-game home losing streak, and I guess that was a bit of a birthday cake for them. Thankfully, the Toronto Blue Jays got back to their winning ways last night with Price on the mound, improving his record to 7-1 as a Blue Jays starter. We'll get into him a little bit later, but the big thing is the full-rounded game that the Toronto Blue Jays played against a much inferior team like the Atlanta Braves last night. And like you said, it was a juggernaut of a performance on all facets, from the mound, from the field, from defense to they plugged up the hole with Tulowitzki really well yesterday. And the offense was coming from not just the big bats, from a lot of small ball as well. So it was great to see the Toronto Blue Jays actually put together a different mindset of offense with a great part of defense last night.
Yeah, well, let's talk about Troy Tulowitzki a little bit. It seemed when he got that injury, that scapula, 2 to 3 weeks, he was the main talk in the Toronto Blue Jays locker room and really around the MLB. But ever since Ryan Goins stepped in at shortstop, I don't know if you saw that play he made yesterday, but that was definitely probably the play of the week. But that's probably going to go down as one of the plays of the year. I mean, he had no right to throw out the runner at first base there. That was a phenomenal play. Ryan Goins is a guy, maybe he's not going to hit as well as Troy Tulowitzki does once Troy Tulowitzki gets into the shape that we know Troy Tulowitzki can do offensively. But he is stellar defensively, and he gives you enough offensively. I mean, this Toronto Blue Jays team, yes, a little bit of a downgrade as far as Tulowitzki and Goins goes, but Goins isn't going to lose this team games at the end of the day.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, he's been a wonderful piece to that infield that we wasn't really expecting to fit in so well off the hop. I mean, I did see that play last night, and it was the amazing range, and the throw to first was fantastic. I mean, you expect your offense to give, or expect your defense, to give you plays like that once in a while. But that infield is completely solid. And, yeah, I mean, Troy Tulowitzki is not going to be around for a couple of weeks with that scapula injury and the bruising. Not a terrible injury, but hopefully he can return by the end of September, early October, they say. It's only going to make that offense and that defense that much stronger. And they've found the pills, or they found the areas to fill in. I mean, let's not forget about Ben Revere in left field as well. I mean, this guy has speed as a center fielder, and he made a couple of catches over the shoulder. He ran some balls down that would definitely fall for easy doubles when other left fielders are playing in that field area there. So kudos to Revere for his speed and his ability to track balls down. Very similar to Devin White, although Mr. White plays center field, of course, but he's got the range to cover a lot of left field and a lot of bloopers and a lot of straight balls that could fall potentially.
Well, what do you think of Ben Revere at the leadoff man? I was like one guy where he was in the 7, 8, 9. I really like Ben Revere there just because he was providing the Toronto Blue Jays with offense. And, I mean, you have to have offense from the bottom part of the lineup. But, I mean, ever since he became the leadoff man, took Troy Tulowitzki for that job, he's flourished at the opportunity. I think this is where Ben Revere needs to. I didn't think at the point, but after seeing what he's done at the leadoff for the Toronto Blue Jays, that's exactly where Ben Revere needs to be on a day-to-day basis.
I will agree with you on that, sir, not only because his average has increased to around 333. He has much better speed than Troy Tulowitzki, and it feels more comfortable. Like, I mean, I remember the days when the leadoff man, like Ricky Henderson, would get on base, however he got on base, and right away it would put that opposing pitcher into some different type of stress, whether it be stealing second or creating signals that, the second player on batting would help out, or, at least putting the pressure on that defense right away, knowing that, hey, if I get on base, you guys are getting in trouble. And Ben Revere has done that. And coming from a 7th, 8th, or 9th position, of course he's still there. He's still going to be a presence. But right off the hop, here's a guy that's got the speed. He's got the ability to get on base. And he's got the percentages to create a little bit of havoc for the 3, 4, and 5 hitter when they show up for the Blue Jays. So it just gives Toronto a batting lineup very similar to the days of the early 90s when they did have Henderson, Molitor, and the boys there. So it's looking like they're going to keep Revere at first in the starting lineup there. So I think it's a good move.
Well, let's not over talk or under talk rather David Price last night. Yes, he was given a pretty big cushion after the first inning. I mean, Toronto Blue Jays scored 4 runs before David Price even threw his first pitch. He gave up run in the first inning. That was the only run he gave up. He was stellar. He went 7 innings, 6 runs. He is one of the first pitchers in Blue Jays history to throw 6+ strikeouts in their first 9 games in a Blue Jays uniform. Now, there was some talk about what if they got David Price and David Price turned out to be a little bit of a bust in a Toronto Blue Jays uniform. Now, obviously, that's out the window. David Price has been a star. He's now 7-1 in 9 starts with the Toronto Blue Jays. He has one no-decision game there when the Toronto Blue Jays struggled offensively. But, I mean, David Price is probably a huge reason that the Toronto Blue Jays are not only a contender, but, I mean, I think they're probably at this point one of the bigger contenders in Major League Baseball.
Well, if you look at their stats based on what happened in Vegas, I mean, their odds to win the World Series have definitely increased from June compared to today. I mean, in June, they were still banked around to be a 33 or a 35-1 odds to win the World Series, and now I think it's below or better than 10-1 odds. I wouldn't concern myself too much with the fact that everybody's thinking, well, what if David Price turned out to be a bust? Who cares? He's not a bust. He's proving everybody that, he is a Cy Young winner. I mean, he would be one of the first AL Cy Young winners to play for 2 different teams, obviously. It's a very different thing to do, or a very difficult thing to do when you get traded and then still be considered to be for a Cy Young award.
Well, Price, stay on that thought for a second, though. Do you think David Price should be the Cy Young? I mean, before yesterday's game, it was probably going to go to Dallas Keuchel of the Houston Astros. He gave up 9 earned runs yesterday. The Houston Astros are just sort of unraveling. They're still 1.5 games safe of a playoff spot in the wild card. But, I mean, they were sitting pretty in the AL West, but a little bit of a losing streak. Do you think David Price, starting the season with the Detroit Tigers and coming to the Toronto Blue Jays, I mean, he's 16-5 on the year. His ERA is 2.42. That is Cy Young numbers right there. Tell me about why he shouldn't be maybe the Cy Young, and at the same spectrum, tell me why you think he should be.
Well, the one reason why he shouldn't be, or the one claim, is the fact that many pitchers, when they do change from a non-contender to a contender or vice versa, they play a different role within the team. Now, obviously, David Price is an ace, whether he plays for the Detroit Tigers or for the Toronto Blue Jays. Having that said, you looked at his record prior to coming to Toronto, he had 4 losses. Now, those 4 losses have been completely negated with the fact that since his trade to Toronto, he's been 7-1. And he is considered that ace. He has solidified that starting rotation. He has been that guy, the only guy that has been able to be that leadoff rotation person and give the strength that the Toronto Blue Jays needed off the mound. Now, I can't come up with an argument to say why he shouldn't be in contention for a AL Cy Young. I mean, I look at those awards at the end of the year, and regardless of like the personal attributes and the personal stats that you see at the end of the year, I still feel that deep down that team should be able to rely on that player, and that player should be helping his team get into the second season, get into that postseason. I mean, it's hard to say, like look at Cabrera last year. He was the Triple Crown winner, or almost had a Triple Crown last year. He was the AL MVP because he did take his team to the promised land. Unfortunately, or close to. unfortunately, when you have a guy like King Hernandez, who played for the Mariners several years back and won a Cy Young, his team was nowhere near the playoffs. And we've discussed that before. So when you think about a team like Houston Astros, who are finally finishing this Cinderella season on a bad streak, having now lost the lead to the Texas Rangers, but still in a wild card position, they got to watch out for the Anaheim Angels because I think they're going to heat up pretty good in the next couple of weeks. Houston is in a lot of trouble. And if you look at their starting rotation, including their ace Keuchel, he's not playing good ball. Now, whether that's a team thing or a personal thing, both of them rub off on each other. If a team is hitting a ball well and they're getting great pitching, the two work well hand in hand. Case in point, 9-1 Braves lost, or the Blue Jays beat the Braves 9-1. But when you look at how the hitting isn't there, that's when you have to rely on your starting rotation. That's where you see the Jays winning these games. I mean, obviously with R.A. Dickey's last start wasn't the greatest for him, but he's been pretty much lights out since the All-Star break. Marco Estrada, the same thing. Drew Hutchison, which has elevated ERA, he still finds ways to win games, although not recently. And now you have David Price, who is that guy, that ace that opposing team has to say, okay, we have to find a way, some way, somehow, to find out how to beat this guy. And they just haven't been able to.
Okay, well, Drew Hutchison, he's been horrid on the road with a +9 ERA. He's been good at home with an under 3 ERA. He is not going to start tonight. There were preliminary talks, at least from what I heard, that he would possibly start against the Atlanta Braves. And I thought it would have been a really good idea for John Gibbons and AA to go to Drew Hutchison right now. I mean, you're playing an Atlanta Braves team that is 32 games under 500. Yes, they do have a little bit of pop in Markakis and Swisher. They do have some pop there, but I mean, if you want to get out of a slump with a pitcher who is still young, he still obviously needs some maturing. I mean, it's the tale of two seasons. Last year, it was the opposite. He was bad at home and he was good on the road. This year, he's been a disaster on the road and good at home. I think this would have been a really good game for Drew Hutchison to pitch against the Atlanta Braves. Marco Estrada is going to go for the Toronto Blue Jays, so I guess that is out of the air. But where do you think Drew Hutchison fits? Do you think he's a bullpen guy for the rest of the year, or do you think perhaps he gets a start against Boston this weekend? I mean, they said Marcus Stroman is likely to pitch tomorrow against Boston in their 3-game series. Do you think Drew Hutchison starts on either Saturday or Sunday?
I don't think so. I think this is where you solidify your 4-man starting rotation. You get into that rhythm and you get to see how each pitcher works off of each other in that starting rotation. I think it was a wise move, actually, to take Drew Hutchison out of the starting rotation. You are putting more chips into the Sausage King of Toronto and Stroman. And Marco Estrada knows how it feels because he was in that position last year. He wasn't in the starting rotation. He felt a little butthurt about the whole situation coming out of the bullpen. But you know what? Now he has his turn to shine. He has Porters this year, and you're going to see a great pitching duel. And you're probably going to see a very positive positioning by Marco Estrada tonight, closing out that series in Atlanta. I think throwing Drew Hutchison into a starting position on the road where he is terrible would only negate any type of positive role or any positive feedback he has gotten from playing in AAA. I mean, he's been dinged up his last 2 starts with Toronto. He has not been pitching well. You can't blame run support. The fact of the matter is he himself hasn't been able to pitch his way out of problem situations. Whereas Marco Estrada, and now with the way Stroman showed how he pitched on his first return back, that solidifies your starting man rotation. I mean, you still have Burley in there, who only pitched, I think, 75 pitches in the first game out. But, I mean, you got Dickey, you got Price, you got Burley, you got Stroman, you got Estrada. I mean, that's 5 guys already. And if you do need help at a home game, and they're really struggling, it's like the top of the second inning, and Burley's playing like crap, there's where you throw Hutchison at home because you know he's going to be lights out at home compared to being on the road.
Well, I think the Toronto Blue Jays, sorry for interrupting, but I think the Toronto Blue Jays have problems rotation-wise. Yes, you have David Price, you have Marco Estrada, you have not Drew Hutchison, Mark Burley. You do have guys who are going to be able to go on a day-to-day basis, Marcus Stroman. But what happens if a guy like Mark Burley has a poor game? Marco Estrada has a poor game. Marcus Stroman, I mean, he's only pitched 1 game in the Major League Baseball this year. He's only pitched 1 game. Don't forget about that. Yes, he pitched pretty well in that first game against the New York Yankees, but he's only pitched 1 game. We're in September. what happens if those guys, like I mentioned before, David Price is a lock. He's your number one bona fide starter. He's going to go out every 4 or 5 days. He's going to give you a good start. You can guarantee that. But what about the guys like Burley, Stroman? I'm not totally sold right now that Stroman is where he wants to be, although he had that good game against the Yankees. Marco Estrada, what are the Toronto Blue Jays going to do if these guys, who I think are, exceeding expectations, Marco Estrada, I would have never expected him to be where he is right now. But the fact of the matter, he is. But, it's September baseball. If you mess up at one time, that could be your season.
But you also have to look at the strength of the rest of the starting rotation. Okay, sure enough, you're saying the what-ifs, the shoulds, and the coulds. Let's not foreshadow or let's not go in a foregone conclusion that they're going to have a bad game. You have to remember that the Blue Jays are the number one offensively powered offense in the entire Big East. So, you're going to have those starts where they're not going to be as great. And yes, Stroman has only pitched one game in the majors this year, and he's probably your number 5 out of 5 on a starting rotation right now. And yeah, you can say Marco Estrada is pitching above expectations, but you've got 3 bona fide veterans there that are going to and are keeping that rotation in sync. And you're not, of course, you expect David Price to be lights out every time he's on the mound. You still have R.A. Dickey that has flipped the switch. Mark Burley's coming off and he's pitching very well after that cortisone shot. He's going to get better. He's going to get his strength back. The bottom line is you need to make sure that the locker room and that team is solid offensively, defensively, and on the mound. And I think the way it's set up now, moving Hutch to the bullpen only solidifies that bullpen even further. If he can get over his personal devils, conundrums, whatever you want to call them, and realize this is for the team, not for himself. If it all comes to fruition, I'm pretty sure he's not going to be upset if he's holding a World Series ring in the palm of his hand by the end of the year if he's moving in the bullpen.
100%.
I think that goes for anybody that plays for the Blue Jays. The fact that they're in this position right now and they're considered to be one of, if not the favorites right now to get into that postseason and to do well, I don't think any of them are worried when they're holding a 2015 World Series ring.
Well, it hasn't happened in 23 years. They haven't been in this situation this late in September, not only just to maybe squeak into a wild card position. This is a team who probably should be on top of the AL. They're only 2 games behind the Kansas City Royals right now, 3 games up on the New York Yankees. They can the Blue Jays can thank the Cleveland Indians last night, who are not eliminated by any means. They're only 4 games back. The Blue Jays' magic number as of today is 15 in the division. For people who do not know what that is, that's a combination of Toronto Blue Jays wins and New York Yankees losses. So say the Blue Jays win 10 more games and the Yankees lose 5, they clinch the division. It's that sort of thing. In the wild card, the Blue Jays have to win 8 more games in the remainder of their 17 games to clinch a wild card spot. That's pretty dreadful. You don't expect the Toronto Blue Jays to be in that situation. But what do you most look forward to tonight's game against the Atlanta Braves for the Toronto Blue Jays, Theo?
I think it's more of a continuation of what you saw from last night. You saw offense from all different facets. One stat I am going to bring up, not because we ever always think of the juggernaut Blue Jays as being the offensive power that they are, and home runs are the number one thing that they work on. You have to remember the small ball abilities of the Toronto Blue Jays here. There was something that was mentioned last night. They have 58 sacrifice flies, which means 58 runs scored on the fly, and also it's the best in the bigs right now too. So when it comes to playing the small ball, the Blue Jays can now show that they can do that as well. And I think they have the speed on the base paths. They have the clutch hitting. Pennington has come out of nowhere and he's played pretty good ball at first whenever he's needed. He's been great in the field, catching the flies and getting the ball in the home plate quickly. The team is playing better, and I think they just need to continue with that role. Give Estrada the offensive support he needs. Blast the Braves early. We know that they're not a strong team. You said they're 35 games under 500. They have been a dreadful year. They are not the Atlanta Braves of old. So when you smell blood, go for the jugular and be the sharks that you can be and devour them. And don't give them a chance to get back up. Prove to everybody that you can beat up on the bad teams. and you can beat up on the good teams. They've done that with the Yankees, taking 3 out of 4 in the Bronx. They have to do that by taking 2 out of 3 in Atlanta. And when they go home, they get to play the Red Sox and the Yankees back-to-back. So finish this road game off strong, the road series off strong, go home and continue to be the beast in the AL East.
Yeah, they're only playing AL East opponents for the remainder of the season after this game tonight against the Atlanta Braves. Theo Tutkaluk, Darnell Duff. Game time tonight, 7 p.m. first pitch. Marco Strata, 12-8 with a 3.31 ERA is going to go against Matt Weisler for the Atlanta Braves. 5-7 with a 5.60 ERA. The National Football League Week 2 begins tonight with a couple powerhouses, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Denver Broncos. After a short break, we're going to be back. You're listening to the First Row Sports Show, CABC3, the future of broadcasting.
They were aggressive on him early, but he did what we brought him over here for again, and he's been great.
It's a fun group of guys. We hang out away from the field. We obviously have a lot of fun in the clubhouse and in the dugout and out on the field as well. That's what you need. It's always that close-knit group of guys that, it's always the last team standing.
So no change in the...
Darnell, you there?
That was David Price talking about last night's game and how this team is really coming together as one. And I think they're looking at the big prize. First of all, making the playoffs, but the biggest prize for them, I think, is winning the World Series, rather. Hasn't happened in 22 years. Why not happen this year? You're listening to the First Row Sports Show. Theo Tutkaluk, Darnell Duff. I'm streaming from Toronto. Theo's in Winnipeg. I'm sure he's having a nice day today. How's the weather in Winnipeg?
Sunny skies today. They're calling for rain. I'm looking forward to no rain because I got to go watch AC/DC later tonight at the IG Field. The Bombers have been kicked out of IG Field because they got about 50 tons worth of steel, and a whole lot of Rosie and Angus going to be marching all over the stage tonight. I can't wait to see my boys. The Wrecking, the house band, as H always puts them at. But AC/DC live tonight at the IG Field here in Winnipeg. Show should start around 9:30, so I'm hoping that the rain stays away. It's not going to be too warm out there, only about 17 degrees. But you know what?
I think AC/DC is they're gonna find a way to fire up the crowd. Pretty big week in Winnipeg, actually. The Winnipeg Jets are going to be home in 5 days for a preseason game against the Edmonton Oilers, and Shania Twain's going to make her second appearance in a couple months in Winnipeg in 3 days' time. So Winnipeg's the hot spot right now. I know Toronto, we have the Blue Jays. I'm actually going to a Blue Jays game next Friday, so we got some interesting things going on between us, and we made some plans to go golfing before I left. We didn't get a chance to do that, but when I'm back in Winnipeg, we got to hit the golf course, Theo.
I hope they're still open in October, where they're calling for an earlier fall than normal, but like I said, let's hold off on those weather birds and let's go hit some rounds, hit some golf balls.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the National Football League and the Kansas City Chiefs and the Denver Broncos going to start tonight, both 1-0. They both should be playoff teams. What do you think the outcome of this game is tonight for Thursday Night Football?
Well, you've got the Broncos traveling to Arrowhead, and Kansas City is lights out when it comes to playing at home. They are almost unbeatable over the last 2 years with Andy Reid at the helm and Alex Smith throwing the ball. The key here is whether or not the Denver Broncos will have an opportunity for their offense to awaken. They suffered tremendously against the Baltimore Ravens team in Week 1. And if it wasn't for Akir Talib's interception late in the fourth to give the Broncos the lead, I don't think Denver would be 1-0. I think they'd be 0-1, struggling big time.
Absolutely.
Denver's lost, not so much on the offense. It's what they've done on the defensive side that has corrected the situation. 2 years ago, when Denver makes it to the Super Bowl final against Seattle, all the talk was how big of an offensive juggernaut they were. Denver had the most points. They had Peyton Manning. They had Welker. They had Thomas. They had everybody. They had a stable in the backfield. They had everything going for them. And what hurt them the most was the fact they had zero defense. Now you look at the Denver Broncos, and it's not so much the offense you're worried about. It's now their defense, because you look at the front. DeMarcus Ware caused so much havoc in Week 1. Then you've got Von Miller in the second level. And then you've got Akir Talib in the backside with all those productive and ageless wandering DBs in Denver. You've got 3 levels of defense there that really showed how great of a defense they can be, if not one of the best defenses in the NFL. Alex Smith has been throwing the ball a lot more aggressively, especially when you saw it in week 1. And he's got a trifecta of weapons there as well. So look for a battle of, I think Kansas City's offense versus Denver's defense, keeping this game a lot closer than people might have thought.
I think it's going to be a really close game. I think it's going to be a good game for all you football fans. I'm going to take the Kansas City Chiefs, and I'm actually watching a little bit of stats here on Sportsnet TV, and they're talking about the Buffalo Bills going into New England this week. I mean, it's probably the biggest Sunday football game this week. Historically, this does not favor the Buffalo Bills, although you can argue that this is a 100% different Buffalo Bills team, but they are 3-25 in their last 28 games against the New England Patriots. They do not win. Rex Ryan is 4-9 coaching against the New England Patriots. So yes, this is a different Buffalo team. They are playing at home against the New England Patriots, but did they really have a good fighting chance of beating the Patriots?
Well, here's the thing. They're not going to Gillette Stadium. They're actually going to Ralph Wilson Stadium in Buffalo. So Buffalo is going to be the home team, and they're going to be the home favorite here because when you play in Buffalo, it's a 180 compared to playing at Gillette Stadium. I have got that game on my radar, and I think Rex Ryan has taken that team and given them a bit of an attitude adjustment big time. I don't think they're going to be able to stop New England, but at the same time, you never know. It's Rex Ryan. He always has tricks up his sleeve. I'm more interested to believe it or not, later on in that Sunday, the 3:25 start, in Philadelphia, the Dallas Cowboys are traveling to Philadelphia. And that's going to be like a home away from home reintroduction of DeMarco Murray versus his old team in Dallas. And Dallas has lost Dez Bryant 4 to 6 weeks due to ankle injury. And he's now just had surgery this past week, so he's definitely on the shelf. What does that do for Tony Romo and his weapons compared to what Philadelphia can do in their Sam Bradford era team with Philadelphia? I mean, that's another game I'm looking at.
How long do we actually think Sam Bradford's going to last? I mean, the guy is, I guess it's safe to say he's injury prone. He does not play full football seasons, and I don't know if the Philadelphia Eagles have the best offensive line in the National Football League. Do you think Sam Bradford's going to actually get through a full NFL season with the Eagles?
I don't think so. I think he's probably been, of the last 5-6 years, Darnell, he's probably been the luckiest drafted quarterback in the NFL. And here's why. First off, he was the last number 1 pick to sign for a massive deal compared to this new CBA agreement they have with these entry-level contracts. He signed for $65 million. He's barely played a game. He's 18-30 as a starter, and a lot of injuries to boot. And you do know that he's injury-prone. Compare that to a gentleman in Washington who has now been kicked to the curb by Gruden and by his owner, Snyder, in Robert Griffin III. And talk about a guy that has, I thought, tremendous upside and way more personal skill to be thrown into a team that has just been hating him nonstop ever since he had his first injury. Sam Bradford has basically been given a second chance at life to being a quarterback in the NFL. And I think working under offensive-minded / college football-minded head coach and Chip Kelly, you're going to see Sam Bradford maybe play more football than people might not think. So I think, he is probably going to miss out a game or two, but I don't think an apparent crazy injury is going to keep him sidelined for too long.
Well, I think we got to touch on 2 games quickly before we move on to the PGA Tour, the third event of the FedEx Cup playoffs this week. Obviously, the BMW Championship in Illinois, 70 of the top PGA players. Jason Day is number 1 on that. You're listening to the First Row Sports Show. Darnell Duff, Theo Tutkaluk. I think we got to talk about Marcus Mariota, Jameis Winston, the battle in week 1. And this was a tough one, not only because Jameis Winston was down 21 points before the guy could even muster a couple first downs, never mind actually get a score. The defense wasn't there for his team, and I'm worried that this team defensively is never going to be there, and I don't think offensively they're going to be there this season either. I mean, I think they need a full year under Jameis Winston to get used to him. They need some more players. I mean, this is a team that could be pretty frightful, I think, this year.
Well, you have to remember, Tampa Bay did not improve to oh my God status in the offseason. Yeah, they had the number 1 pick for a reason. They were terrible last year. Like, don't forget that. Just because you draft a Heisman winner in Jameis Winston, that you're going to be becoming an A-plus team when you were a D-rated team last year. Let's not forget that they were the worst team in the NFL last year. What Jameis Winston has working for him are 2 massive towers playing wide out, one being an ex-Charger that I still love, Vincent Jackson, who has a crazy attitude chip on his shoulder. And that's the reason why San Diego got rid of him, I personally think. But unless they perform on the offensive side, you have to remember the defense has to be given a break. And Marcus Mariota and Tennessee did not give the Tampa Bay Buccaneers a single break on defense. They smashed them for 42 points.
So let's move this.
Smashed them.
Let's move this forward. Do the Tennessee Titans have a fighting chance of making the playoffs if they play the way they did last week? Now, I know they played against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't know where they're going to land this year. They're not going to be a good team. They scored 42 points. Do you think this is going to be a good team led by Marcus Mariota for the remainder of the season, or was this just, a very good first rookie game? Probably one of the better games for a number 1 pick quarterback-wise in NFL history. He threw for 209 yards. He had a very good completion efficiency rating. This was a good game for the Tennessee Titans. Do you think they can do this for the rest of the season?
Well, Tennessee's playing Cleveland this Sunday, and there's a good chance they could end up being 2-0 after week 2. I think what Tennessee did that Tampa Bay didn't was play a more solid, well-rounded game. I mean, their defense played stellar. Mariota didn't have to win the game, whereas Winston is expected to almost win games, the gunslinger that he is. So the attitude of the organization and the coaching staff is what clearly defined week 1 between Tennessee and Tampa Bay. Tennessee realized, okay, we have to play a full 53-man roster here. We have to play a complete game, and that's what's going to give us the W. And I think they're putting team before personal attributes here in Tennessee, which could prove to be a winning success also in week 2, taking out Cleveland when they're playing in Cleveland. I mean, you have to look at the team aspect of things. That's why Oakland has never been great over the last decade. That's why you see teams like Minnesota that have been wonderful at times but then get hurt because they think of their individual prowess as opposed to the team effort. I personally look at other games. You've got Seattle playing in Green Bay, the Sunday night game, in Green Bay at Lambeau. That's going to be one heck of a game. You've also got another battle between Detroit and Minnesota in Minnesota. That's a battle of division rivals. And then my boys in San Diego play in Cincinnati, so that's a bit of a travel for them. But, I mean, one thing I want to touch on real quick with San Diego, they cannot be heart attack kids like they have been for the last 3 or 4 years under Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers has to find a way to keep the game very close in the first half, make his adjustments, and then win the game in the second half. I mean, in week 1, they were down 21-3 to the Detroit Lions. Detroit could have easily taken that game in the third and fourth quarter and ran away with it. Thankfully, for my boys in San Diego, they solid up on defense. They bouncy up on the boys, and they end up winning that game by 5. Thank God they showed up in the second half because it looked absolutely ugly for the San Diego Chargers. I almost threw my jersey off. That's how bad it was. But there's a lot of great games going on Sunday, and I think everyone's going to be blessed with, everyone was talking about these Thursday night games not being exciting. I think that's going to change tonight, seeing the Chiefs and the Broncos play.
Yeah, I think if there's going to be something to set the stage for Thursday night games for the rest of the season, this is going to be the game to go. I mean, it's going to be a great game, I think, personally. The Denver Broncos, the Kansas City Chiefs, Alex Smith, Peyton Manning. Who knows what Peyton Manning is going to do? Who knows what Alex Smith's going to do? But I was just watching Sportsnet again, actually. It's pretty convenient that Sportsnet just happens to be in front of me on the TV, so I thought, hey, why not, right? Hendrik Sedin is on right now. But Big Papi, David Ortiz, 6 35-plus home run seasons with the Boston Red Sox. That is unbelievable. David Ortiz, he can hit the ball. He's a sure ballot Hall of Famer in my mind. But after the break, Theo Tutkaluk, Darnell Duff, we're going to talk about the PGA Tour golf. And Theo is not going to hang up. Just going to put Sportsnet on quickly, and I'll be right back.
Sounds good.
First Row Sports Show. See you later.
All the Connor McDavid hype going on?
Yeah, how can you miss it? I mean, it's going to be great to see him up close this year. I mean, we were here when Crosby and Ovechkin came into the league, but they were on the Eastern Conference, and to see Connor now and to play against them a lot of games this year, it's going to be fun.
Okay, look, families.
Connor McDavid, already one of Edmonton's favorite athletes. 3 points last night against the University of Alberta Golden Bears in their rookie challenge. Leon Draisaitl had 4 points. He played with Edmonton a little bit last year, went down, just wasn't ready. This year, you have to think Draisaitl is going to make that jump. I hope so. I'm an Edmonton Oilers fan. I just want them to win games. We're going to talk about them after the next break. We're going to go to PGA Tour Golf. Third event of the FedEx Cup playoffs this week. It's going to tee off today. 70 players at the BMW Championship in Illinois. Jason Day tops it. And Jason Day is having quite the season, I would say. He came into the season with only 4 tournament wins, won a major. He's played a lot of great golf. He deserves to be exactly where he is on top of the FedEx Cup leaderboard.
You know what? He's been talk of the town for the last 3 months, that's for sure. I mean, coming off the British Open and then winning the Canadian Open, he's been lights out. The guy has been, you know, the man from down under has truly taken over the Americans by storm here, leading the FedEx Cup and only playing 18 events compared to Jordan's 23. I mean, they both have the same amount of wins and 4 wins apiece, but Jason Day is the hottest golfer right now. And he's got all facets of his game working to his advantage. And I think, you know, you can't take anything away from Jordan Spieth and Ricky Fowler, both young players from the U.S. and have done great things over the last couple of years. But this is Jason Day's year to shine, and I think he's proving it big time.
So who do you think going into this week and going into the final 30 next week, do you think Jason Day is going to hold on and win his first FedEx Cup ever? Comes with a cool $11 million plus paycheck. I mean, that's pretty unbelievable. The guy obviously doesn't need any money, but just the fact that he wants to win a FedEx Cup, do you think he's going to hold on? Or do you think a guy like Henrik Stenson can come back? The big Swede lost to Ricky Fowler in a tight battle 2 weeks ago at the Deutsche Bank. Who's going to win the FedEx Cup in 2 weeks' time?
I mean, you can't look at, the top 5. I mean, you look at Jason Day at 4,680 in points, and you look at number 5 of being Bubba Watson at 3,300. You know, that's a 1,300-point difference. So, I mean, unless you see one of those top 3 players, I mean, even the top 2, and you look at, you know, Jason Day and Jordan Spieth are 650 points ahead of Ricky Fowler in third. Unless you see one of those top 2 players really slide, and you see one of the 3, 4s, or 5s really have an outstanding run of going back-to-back here in the next couple of events, I don't think anybody's going to catch either Jordan or Jason, and it's going to be a battle between one of those 2 personally. I think 3, 4, and 5, and especially 6 down, I think those players are a little too far behind right now in the FedEx Cup.
Well, I think it's hard to overlook the FedEx Cup, but it still seems that Tiger Woods is still one of the biggest names.
I knew you were going to. I was saying to myself, is he going to mention Tiger? Is he going to keep one show without mentioning the good old Eldrick Tiger Woods? And of course he doesn't.
I mean,
sorry.
It's hard not to. I mean, you predicted me when I brought up the Toronto Blue Jays as the first topic pretty much every single show we do. I talk about Tiger Woods. You know, I like to keep it the same, but I like to change up things. But we're going to talk about Tiger Woods quickly. Where do you think this guy is going? Where do you think he is next year? Do you think he's going to win a couple tournaments? Do you think he's going to get to Jack Nicklaus and that major thing? I think he will. Not a lot of people agree with me. A lot of people disagree. What side are you on?
You know what? I'm not sitting on the fence. I mean, I'm hopefully going to be heading to Hawaii here in January, where the Sony Open is, and maybe I'll see Tiger playing his first golf outing of the new year out in Hawaii. Who knows? We've talked about Tiger before, and you can probably ask 100 out of 100 PGA golfers. 95% of it is between the ears, and the 5% of it is with the golf club. Tiger, when he is Tiger, can play those rounds that he scores 64s and 65. He's done it. He's shown it. The problem with Tiger is when he gets off his game and he starts shooting a 78 or an 80 because he loses it between the ears. I feel for the guy. I think he's still got a good decade of golf in him. I mean, I think what he really has to do is he really has to monitor his swing and make sure his swing is efficient and doesn't put so much torque and tension on his body. He's had injuries in his knees, his low back, two very, very suspect areas, especially for golfers. I mean, ankles, knees, and low back are the three things that, as a golfer, you got to maintain. He has put on a bit of bulk in recent years. He's now trying to slim back a little bit. The guy pounds the ball. He doesn't have to be number one in everything. He just has to put 4 rounds together. And he's only 4 or 5 back from Jack. So if he wants to be considered for one of those aspects, yeah, I mean, I would love to see Tiger get close to Jack. You know, I'd like to see him go above Jack. You would like to see that heartfelt story finish. You'd like to see that Shakespearean tragic hero, you know, come back and, you know, reset himself as the best player ever in the world.
Well, I know there's a lot of doubters on the Tiger Woods side, but I also know there is people that believe in Tiger Woods. They think he's going to get that major record. I am one of them. I like Tiger Woods. I think he's great for the game. When he's playing well, I don't think there's a better, I don't know what you want to call it, player to be in the game than Tiger Woods is. Nonetheless, we're going to switch topics one more time. This is our last one, and I am from Winnipeg, Manitoba. Now, I know you Toronto Maple Leafs fans might not like this, but we're going to talk the Winnipeg Jets and what they have done this offseason. And quite frankly, Theo, they haven't done much. They have not become a better team this offseason. And last year, they were a borderline playoff team. They did scrape into the 8th spot, got dominated by the Anaheim Ducks, although they probably could have won a couple games in that series. But they more or less had no business being in the playoffs last year. And this year, they've done nothing. What business do they have being in the playoffs this year?
You know what? I think what they've got to worry about is not so much what they haven't done in the off season. It's what they're building on from the past season. And, you know, I was fortunate enough to be involved with a Puck Talks program that came into the Pint on Tuesday night. Real quick, what Puck Talks is it's a group of individuals that's going to each Canadian NHL city to discuss the hot topics and the trending topics of each NHL team. And it came across on Tuesday night, two big things that they're worried about are the new signings or the restricted free agency of Andrew Ladd and Dustin Byfuglien. How are they going to sign those contracts? As well as all of these players that have yet to be signed but have still been asked to come to training camp. One being Yuri Tolusti, Jim Slater, and lastly, there's a third one that made Lee Stepniak, are the 3 players that were on a Jets roster last year that still haven't signed contracts. And what Chevy's doing, Kevin Cheveldayoff, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to see whether or not these new Jets, most notably Patrick Ehlers and Nick Patan, they're seeing whether or not they can give them an opportunity to crack a roster. And right now on defense, you don't have a place for Josh Morrissey because you have 6 stalwarts back there already. So what Chevy's rolling the dice with is giving an opportunity for these. He's trying to give these younger players an opportunity to maybe crack this roster. And if they're able to crack the roster, great. But he's doing so by not signing those 3 players I'd mentioned before. He also has to be worried about contracts that are going to be coming up in the next year. I'd already mentioned Ladd and Byfuglien. You also have to look at Trouba. And if you bring up Patan and Ehlers, those guys are also going to have to come in and have to sign entry-level or introductory contracts. And you know Andrew Ladd's looking for a boost from his 4.5 that he's getting paid now. And whether or not you keep Dustin Byfuglien, that's a whole different story. I mean, Andrew Ladd had the most points in his career season last year at 62. He leads that team both on the ice and in the locker room. Dustin Byfuglien became a fan favorite, except for his antics at the end of the year. But he was the fan favorite, and he is someone that we've discussed in length over the last year that an opposing team has to consider when playing the defensive strategy.
Yeah, yes,
He's a
but
big guy.
At the same time, this is a two-part thing I have to say. Andrew Ladd had a really good year. Like you said, 62 points, led his career. But the Winnipeg Jets do not have a bona fide first liner. What they have is second liners and third liners playing on their first line. And that's why I don't think the Winnipeg Jets are going to go anywhere. And as far as Dustin Byfuglien goes, I know the fans like him. Some fans love him. Some fans hate him. He sparks the crowd no matter what. If you like him or hate him, Dustin Byfuglien sparks the crowd. But Dustin Byfuglien, quite frankly, also does a lot of dumb things. Look at the suspension at the end of the season. The penalties he gets. I mean, just the effort Dustin Byfuglien has sometimes. Dustin Byfuglien, after this season, I don't think they should re-sign him. They should either trade him in the middle of the season, because you'd be silly not to trade him in the middle of the season. If you're going to give him away to free agency, you'd be silly to do that, because you're not going to get anything from him. You're going to get something for Dustin Byfuglien if you trade him in the middle of the season. Yes, maybe he's going to have a career year, but that's just how sometimes thing goes. I don't think, regardless of if he has a career year or not, I don't think you sign him. Just because I think he's more of a liability than he is a benefit for the Winnipeg Jets hockey team.
Well, you said it exactly. I mean, what goes around good-wise comes around bad-wise with Dustin Byfuglien. I mean, as much as a fan favorite somebody is to a hockey team, it's what you do on the ice. He's a guy that has never led a team in points, yet is getting paid like he's doing so. Here's a guy that has led a team in penalty minutes and is getting paid like a bona fide thug. And lastly, you talk about the mentality and what Dustin Byfuglien has done, not only on the ice but off the ice in his antics. The guy can be a loose cannon. He does not like the media attention, which is why he's kind of done okay in Winnipeg, because as much as Winnipeg fans love him, I mean, and as much as reporters love him, the relationship he has with the media is a small, quiet one, and it's benefited the Jets and Dustin Byfuglien. If he were to be in Toronto or Vancouver or a major market, he would not be as successful. That's why he was kind of looking at Chicago and getting out of there, and why he signed a massive deal to get to Atlanta, because he knew it was a small market. He could walk the streets as if nobody knew him, and everything would be fine and dandy. Everybody knows who Byfuglien is in Winnipeg. He drives a ridiculous brand-new blue Escalade, so you can't miss it. So you know where Dustin is. He's drawing certain attention to him. Sometimes it's the wrong attention to him. So, I agree with you. I mean, you look at the Jets and you look at their stance of where they're going to be in the standings compared to the other Western Conference teams. They didn't improve compared to some other teams. We look at the Edmonton Oilers signing Connor McDavid. We look at the Calgary Flames improving with Dougie Hamilton and then getting their stalwart Giordano back from his biceps injury. Vancouver's the only other team that really didn't improve. I mean, they still had a successful year, but they should be a lot better. And then lastly, all the teams that are playing like Anaheim and San Jose definitely did not play well last year, and they're looking for a rebound year. Minnesota, St. Louis, Chicago, they're all strong teams. Where does that leave Winnipeg? It leaves Winnipeg almost in the same position that they were last year, if not worse. And that's why you look at a position player like Byfuglien and saying, okay, if we need to make the playoffs, here's a rook, here's some sort of chess piece we can start trading if we need to do that. And I think your preference to sign Ladd or Byfuglien in the offseason or during the year would be Ladd over Byfuglien. Ladd controls that leadership, whereas Byfuglien is that loose cannon.
Okay, well, give me one last thought on the Winnipeg Jets as far as where are the Winnipeg Jets going to be in the standings this year with one of the tougher divisions in the National Hockey League. Is this an 8th-place playoff team? Is this a 5th-place playoff team? Or is this just not a playoff team for the 2015-2016 campaign?
Well, I think you have to look at, how we can't say what the other teams are going to do. So let's just look strictly at the Winnipeg Jets. And like I said at the beginning, they want to build the stable. They want to build from the ground up. They want to make sure that they have the pieces of the puzzle that are going to mingle and catalyze what they're doing during the season and the offseason. I mean, there was a Sportsnet magazine article back in April or May that projected the Winnipeg Jets to be Stanley Cup contenders by 2019 or 2018, which I think they're on the road to. I mean, what Chevy has done, especially with his drafting over the last 2 years, and what he's done with those young players, those are the players he's focusing on. And he's not willing to trade the farm to get that one player that might get him there this year. And I think a lot of the fans in Winnipeg, a lot of the fans of the Jets, and the Jets organization themselves believe in building from the ground up.
Well, hey, I know it's a totally different sport, but let's look at Alex Anthopoulos. He's given away the farm. They said, you know what, this is the time. Now is the time. Look at where they're going to be. They're possible World Series champions. Now, I understand the Winnipeg Jets probably can't go to that extent because maybe they don't have the players to do the same thing the Toronto Blue Jays did. But, I mean, I think at the same time, you have to look at your farm team and you have to realize that this is a now league. I mean, sure, projections are good. I mean, the Edmonton Oilers have been projected to win the Stanley Cup for the prior 3 years. Look at what happened. They weren't even close to the playoffs. This is a now league. You have to win games. I mean, job security is not there. If you're not winning games, you're out of a job. This is a now league. And I understand that they want to build for the future. And that's all fine and dandy. But if I'm a paying fan and I'm paying $100 a seat, come on, that's a joke. The Winnipeg Jets, I think they have to start winning games, and they have to start winning games now. It's not good enough just to squeak into the 8th spot because unless you're the Los Angeles Kings, you're not getting out of the first round. It's just not happening. So for the Winnipeg Jets, they have to make moves, I think.
Sure, you can look at it and be rash about that decision-making, D, but the thing is, the fans here support the Jets. And as bad as the Jets are going to be, or as good as the Jets are going to be, they still fill 15,000 seats. I don't think Cheveldayoff is really worried about – he's worried about the performance on the ice. That goes without saying. I mean, if you're in the organization, all you want to do is win. You never want to see a loss. But to get to that point, if you look around the NHL and who's available for a piece of trade or, who's going to truly make this team that much better – you can't name one person that's going to make you a bona fide Stanley Cup contender/winner with one or two trades. It doesn't work like that in the NHL compared to the majors. When you look at a player like if you hypothetically, Steve Stamkos is coming off his final year of a contract, and everybody is already projecting that he's going to go to Toronto because they've got Stamkos jerseys flying all over the shelves. But what if he were to come to Winnipeg? Do you think Steven Stamkos would make that an automatic Stanley Cup winner if he came to Winnipeg? Or Ryan Getzlaf? Or a Corey Perry? Or a Geno Malkin?
Well, let's look at what Sidney Crosby did for the Pittsburgh Penguins.
He's won one Stanley Cup.
He has won one Stanley Cup.
It's Marc-Andre Fleury. He had a stable of players around him supporting that. And like you've mentioned it already, Darnell, you can't even mention 3 starting forwards that make up a scoring line 1 for the Winnipeg Jets. You've got Andrew Ladd, who has always been a second or third line player. Brian Little, who has never, in his wildest dreams, could make a first line with any other team in the NHL. He's a good player. He's a great role player, and he's playing that first line.
But that's what he is.
But that's what it is. And Blake Wheeler is probably one of the best, and if not the most talented forward the Jets have. Scheifele is always going to be a second-line player. You can't expect Patan or Ehlers to move up that fast. They're going to be barely playing third or fourth line. And you look from forward 7 to 12, it's 6 guys that are bruisers, that are bouncers, that are broilers, that are going to take the bust off and clean it up. I mean, let's be honest here. It's not a stable full of performance, prowess, all-stars. It's a win-by-committee chemistry program. And the chemistry is working because, yes, the Jets, they had 99 points last year in the 8th spot. That's ridiculous. That is the best season the Winnipeg Jets, either 1.0 or 2.0, has had in history. And the fact that they're able to squeak into the playoffs and now we expect more out of them, that's a huge undertaking. And I think what you have to remember is it's winning by committee. And I think Paul Maurice is the right coach there to lead this 23 roster in that direction.
Yeah, I think Paul Maurice has done a really good job in a Winnipeg Jets behind the bench. I mean, if they would have kept Claude Noel, who knows what would have happened with this Winnipeg Jets team. And I know that's the case with a lot of teams. You get a new coach. The Toronto Maple Leafs have Mike Babcock. Who knows what's going to happen in that franchise? It obviously, that goes without saying. Things are going to change if you're going to get a good caliber coach. Paul Maurice has proven he's had success in the NHL and the overseas. Of course, he's done a really good job, but just the quickest answer you could be. Give me the quickest answer you could as far as where does this team finish this season?
I'm going to say between 6 and 8, 6 and 9. I mean, they're going to be on that cusp. I mean, if you looked at last year, all these teams 6 through 10 is separated between 5 or 8 points, and that's going to be 4 wins, 4 ties, 3 losses that you shouldn't have had. I mean, we're not going to be competing for a division leader here. I think we all know that. I think what we have to really be safe to say is that between 6 to 10 spot is where the Jets are going to face, and hopefully they're going to be in the playoffs again next year.
I mean, Winnipeg fans, they can hope that, and maybe it's going to be right, but I'm not on a Winnipeg Jets side right now. I'm not feeling the Winnipeg Jets vibe.
You think the Jets are going to finish with more points than your Leafs?
Well, I wouldn't say they're my Leafs. I would say I'm living in the city that the Leafs play.
So your city right now versus my city right now. You think the Leafs are going to finish with more points than the Jets?
Well, no, I don't think the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to be anything special this year. Yes, they have the best coach, probably the best coach in the NHL right now, and maybe the top 3 in the history of the NHL. But they're not ready to be. I mean, Mike Babcock has admitted himself this is going to be a process. They're going to go through things. They're going to go through what the Edmonton Oilers had to do for a few years. Hopefully now the Edmonton Oilers have gone through what they've needed to and all this tragicness they've gone through the past 5 years. But in that case, no, I think the Winnipeg Jets will finish higher than the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Do you think Mike Babcock has 3 years of progression or building? And I'm thinking 3 years, not the full 7-year term, but do you think he has it in him to do this again? I mean, here's a guy that said in Anaheim it was a struggle, and he had the pieces of the puzzle to get the team to where it was. Obviously, he didn't win a Stanley Cup in Anaheim. He was in Detroit. He has won a Stanley Cup in Detroit, but he had an amazing, talented group, both on the front end with Stevie Y and the back end with Lidstrom. So do you think he has it in him to be that guy to build a team from the ground up again? I mean, he's got Lou Lamoriello, who's the ageless wonder. I don't know what role he's going to be, and we've talked about him before. He's been pretty quiet over the last 2 or 3 months. Brendan Shanahan looks over everything. I mean, what's his role going to be, and how effective is he going to become trading or positioning players? It's all up to Babcock right now, and it's going to be a taxing piece of work for him over the next 2 or 3 years. Would you agree with that?
100%. This is not an easy feat that Mike Babcock is going into. It's going to be tough. It's going to be a grind. But at the end of the day, if anybody can do it, I think it's going to be Mike Babcock. But I think it's going to take a few years. So, yes, the Winnipeg Jets do place higher than the Toronto Maple Leafs this year. The Edmonton Oilers place higher than any other team. They get 165 points. No, I'm just kidding. Who knows what the Edmonton Oilers are going to be this year? They got Cam Talbot. They have some good players. Obviously, they have Connor McDavid. Steven Stamkos said Connor McDavid is better than he is right now. What do you think about that in quickly?
You know what? Connor McDavid is one of those guys that comes around every 10 years or so, right? I mean, everybody said the same thing about Sid the Kid. Everybody said the same thing about Nate McKinnon in Colorado. Now this guy's coming around and doing his thing. You have to see what he's going to do against the big boys. I mean, it's like watching all these college guys do amazing work in football, and then they make it to the upper elite, the top 1% in the NFL, and they either strive or they get forgotten about. And that's something we can talk about in another show. But you have to see how he's going to face other NHL caliber teams. I mean, sure, you can play University of Alberta all you want. Those are a bunch of university kids that don't have scholarships, did not go to the NCAAs to play hockey, and they're probably decent hockey players that have played in juniors, but are now there for their education. These are not guys that are signing $1 million contracts, and you should be shining on them. You should be dazzling them. You should be dangling around them. You are Connor McDavid. You are not some has-been. You're not some guy that's been drafted in the 7th round. You have expectations. You have to fulfill those. You can't be like Taylor Hall. You can't be like Nuge. You can't be like Yakupov. And you certainly can't be like anybody else that I can't mention. You have to be what Connor McDavid is supposed to be. And you have to, if you're going to be the golden one in Edmonton, you hope that they've struck oil with you. Unfortunately, oil prices are low. And hopefully he's worth a little more than oil.
I hope so. And I can't leave the show without talking about PK Subban off the ice. $10 million he gave to a Montreal hospital, and that is phenomenal. I mean, if everybody who made $1 million a year, I know PK makes a lot more than $1 million a year, but if everybody who made that much money gave a little bit, not even $10 million, but maybe $1 million, maybe a couple $100,000, $50,000, if they gave that to hospitals, who knows? I mean, the health system would be different. Who knows what would happen? I mean, I just can't say how generous that was of PK Subban. And that just says, yes, maybe sometimes he's a goon on the ice, but that's what he's paid for. He's a good guy. Obviously, he's a good guy at heart at the end of the day.
I mean, a great philanthropic effort there by PK, and something that you would not expect from a player still playing in the NHL. I mean, that's a large amount of money. Obviously, they named the center after him. I mean, they'd be stupid not to. But moreover, it just shows the generosity of a young man beginning his career and the importance that he plays in a community like Montreal. I mean, he's got a couple notches in my book after that move. A great guy, a great thing he's done for the city of Montreal. You know, it's not putting pressure on any other players because a lot of players out there do amazing things in the community. And it doesn't have to be large things. I mean, the one thing that I've learned in my 35 years being on this world is sometimes not always about the money, Darnell, but it's also about the time and the effort and seeing that one kid smile. I mean, you hear the stories of the Jets going to the Children's Hospital or doing food bank work or doing anything that helps support a strong community. And I think that's what's most important here. It's not how much money you throw at something. It's rather how much time and effort you can put into something and towards a community and towards your own life to fulfill your life. It's not always just about hockey. It's about something else. And congratulations to the Montreal Canadiens. Congratulations on the city of Montreal. You have somebody that is not just saying monetarily that he wants to be a part of the community, but he wants to help and provide for the city of Montreal. So I'll leave it at that. I'm off my soapbox there, buddy. I'll tell you, great move.
Darnell Duff, Theo Tutkaluk, the First Row Sports Show. Theo Tutkaluk, thanks a lot for joining me in today. Hopefully we can have you on the next couple days.
You know what? It's like doing this thing the old time, baby. Loved it. Loved to hear your voice. We didn't mess on Lawless at all today, but we'll leave it for another day.
Absolutely. And stay tuned to the First Row Sports Show. Kyle Deering's going to be on. Derek Ariniak's going to be on. Theo Tutkaluk's going to be back on. Trying to get a couple guys here from Sportsnet on the show. So, I mean, stay tuned. It's going to be exciting. Hopefully you enjoy my path. Have a great day. We'll see you later.